First time I made Valerie cry from laughter.
Yeah.
I would like to think I only make Valerie cry from laughter, but it's happened a few times.
I mean, once you made me cry from not laughter, but you know.
Welcome to The Story Thinker, a Webtoons and Witcher podcast for superfans with scene-by-scene analysis. Featuring sharp co-hosts for a fuller picture, we dive deep into character psychology, relationships, and theories. We'd love it if you could like, subscribe, comment, and rate us on all podcast platforms and social media. For bonus content, you can support The Story Thinker on Patreon. Let's begin.
Ooh.
Hello, everyone, and today, welcome to a very special episode. We have Tim and Valerie here from 𝗪𝗧𝗍𝗵𝗏 𝗪𝗏𝗁.
Hey.
And I want them to tell you all about their podcast, but before they do, I just want to say that it is my favorite Witcher podcast. I hope that's like not mean to say or playing favorites, but it really is.
I mean, we love to hear it. Thank you so much.
That's really sweet. Yeah.
Tim and Valerie are very entertaining. They're hilarious. I love that you have different sections in your podcast. It makes it really interesting. I feel like I learn a lot. Besides for your analysis, it's also like there's one of my favorite sections, like I said, is when you compare the book and the show, and also the 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗃, who's stupidest person in the episode. Fantastic. And I love that you guys disagree with each other and bring out different elements. So I love it. But now, yes, please tell us about yourself and a little bit more about the podcast.
Thank you. Well, I'm Valerie, and this is Tim.
Hey.
And we do the Whiskey with Witcher podcast. We are real life BFFs who, during the pandemic, hyperfixated on Witcher and decided, you know what, let's do a podcast about it. We're also big whiskey fans. So we basically pair a whiskey with each episode of the show, which has hilarious results, question mark sometimes. But yeah, and we talk about things from the games, the books, the TV show. The TV show is our main focus, but we've explored like all sorts of elements of the Witcher universe. We even just had an episode about the comic books. So
yeah. No, I mean, Valerie summed it up really nicely. I'm just really kind of there for I mean, we're both big fans, but I think that's kind of what our thing is we approach it from different directions. And I suspect you're the same way, Mindy. Like we all kind of respond to different things. We came to it through different ways. I mean, I think Valerie's not wrong. The show was sort of our first big exposure to it. But prior to that, I had played a fair amount of the game. So I at least knew who Geralt and the world was. And I knew who Yennefer was even before she became, how we think of her now on the show. So, it just, we came from it in different areas. And I think we have different sensibilities. And so I think we do a fun job. Like unpacking each episode and each book or whatever we're discussing in a way that's not too serious.
Yeah, Tim and I, we both work in media, so we come to it from like a media critical lens, but also like I've been involved in fandom for decades, a long time. So I'm used to the fandom side of things in a way that I think other podcasts maybe don't necessarily talk about. They do a deeper dive into like the lore and the mythos and mythology and everything. Whereas we're like, we want to see these two characters kiss. They're both so pretty. So that's kind of more our speed. And, alcohol.
I have zero appreciation for alcohol, so like I realized I didn't even mention that in the
no, that's totally fair though. I think most people like that was the hook. We were trying to come up with something to like set ourselves apart when we first wanted to do this podcast, and that's what we landed on. But yeah, a lot of people I think come for The Witcher and maybe learn a thing or two about the whiskey industry, but we have people that are into the whiskey and not so much The Witcher, and people that are into The Witcher and don't care about the whiskey, and that's totally fine. A listen is a listen. You're welcome regardless.
Yeah. But I am a little curious though, Mindy, how you got into The Witcher, because it is so different than everything else you discuss on your podcast here.
Yeah, so it was in a really interesting roundabout way. My husband had actually watched The Witcher because he loves fantasy in general and massive Lord of the Rings fan and all that stuff. But I don't watch violent things, so he never even like asked me to watch it with him because he knew that this was like off the table. And I was how was it? Let's Play, the webtoon Let's Play was optioned to be a anime by, I think it was HiveMind Entertainment. And so I was looking up HiveMind Entertainment because I was like, oh, I would love to be a part of it. Like maybe I'll just be like, hey, hire me. And I found that I think Lauren Hissrich was associated with Hive Mind Entertainment. So I was listening to interviews with her, and then she was talking about The Witcher. I was like, wow, this sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
And I started watching The Witcher, and believe it or not, I was actually able to ignore or stomach the violence, and I really enjoyed it. So surprise, surprise. So it was actually through webtoons that I got into it.
Nice.
Okay, that's interesting. And the fact that you
So,
what do you think it is for you though, that really set it apart from these other sort of occasionally violent fantasy series out there? Because it is like none of the other ones. I mean, I've not listened to all the history of your podcast, but I don't know that you normally talk about this sort of content on it.
So I've only talked about webtoons, but in terms of like what I engage in personally, I read a ton of fantasy, but I will admit it's mainly like YA fantasy written by females, which I do think is very much more focused on like the romance than the violence. So I still don't think I've watched like other typically violent fantasy shows. Actually, because of Henry Cavill, I was listening to an interview with him once, and he talked about like the fantasy books that he'd grown up on that he loved. So I went and I read them at the library, and I was not into them, let's just say. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I hate to be like, war of the genders or something, but I really think men and women have different sorts of interests, or at least on the whole. And I was just, I didn't relate to any of the books that he was into. So, but yeah, I guess Witcher has enough of that emotional pull for me to be into it.
Nice.
Yeah. Like I do think Valerie and I have talked about other shows on the podcast. We just did an episode, a Halloween episode devoted to Wednesday. But I don't know that we would ever, like, I'll never say never, but I don't know that we would ever do sort of another traditional fantasy show like this, because I do find that we kind of tend to disagree on them not in an interesting way. It's just like Valerie doesn't like them enough to want to talk about them. There aren't that
many for starters.
There's, that's true too.
There's like Game of Thrones and Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings. And I think that might be it. And then some of the, the dramas from other countries that aren't like Western media, they have a few, but there's not that many.
But I was thinking, like, I don't think we'd ever, do an episode where we talked about any of those ones you just mentioned. Like, I told you at one point, I'd love to talk about Game of Thrones or House of the Dragons, and you just have no interest in it.
No interest in reading the book. Sorry.
Yeah.
Zero interest.
So it's like, I just think that's the thing. You might, you may be right. Valerie and I have, like, it's not just Witcher for us. Like, there's other things we're both into, but I wouldn't call any of them fantasy. So I find that interesting.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I'm actually thinking, I think this will be the only Witcher content I produce, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to introduce, anything besides for webtoons, because I figured it made sense. And now I'm thinking like maybe I will just stick to webtoons, but honestly, it doesn't matter much, because it's not like I don't have the emotional bandwidth or the energy bandwidth to do episode by episode for anything else right now besides for webtoons. So if I do like one Witcher thing a year, it's like, it's okay.
Fair enough.
It does take a lot. Yeah. I'm impressed you're able to get them out as regularly as you are.
I definitely feel myself slowing down so as I get with my other things in my life. But so I'm trying to make sure I actually am consistent with the webtoons content. So but yes, for episode by analysis, please go to Whiskey with Witcher.
Thank you.
And they were doing a great job, and it's wonderful. So what we're doing for this episode, I prepared a list of 21 questions. We'll see how many we get through, of just fun questions like most this, least that, worst this. And I hope you'll find them fun. And I'm curious to see what you guys, how our answers diverge. We stuck to, within this season. So I am curious. All right, ready to start?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, first one, wittiest comeback. Okay, start with you, Valerie.
First? Yeah. I mean, I loved Jaskier's whole thing in the forest where he says to 𝗪𝗏, "How dare you? I would milk his death for like 3 songs and maybe an epic poem." And I also just really loved the swagger on 𝗪𝗶𝗁, Prince. Like, that was also pretty great.
Is that swaggery? Like,
I think so. He's like a prince. He's like, 𝗪𝗏𝗁, Prince.
I thought that was a little awkward, but it was a good line. Like, I liked it, but I didn't really see it as swaggery. But maybe I misread that.
There was some heat on that.
I think that could reflect 𝗪𝗏𝗁 in general, because on the one hand he's this very praised, prince. On the other hand, he's also awkward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I mean, that was what made him so endearing. Mine, I have a couple that were, I couldn't decide between the two. So, but they're short. Like I like, 𝗙𝗪, like this in whether it's a real 𝗙𝗪 or this, image of 𝗙𝗪 that shows up near the end. I like her just kind of sassiness and wittiness. And I just loved her line, like that she says to Siri, another tip, don't punch rocks. Just because it's like, yes, I did something stupid. Thanks for rubbing it in. And then the other one is I'm a huge 𝗙𝗪𝗹𝗪 𝗪𝗪 fan, especially as she's portrayed on the show by 𝗪cie 𝗂𝗧. And her line she says to �dijkstra after he's been completely messed up by Geralt and is there like limping around, is when after she says she can't portal him out, or explains that to him, she says, good thing you enjoy pain. Yeah. So as they can limp out of the castle. So those were my two favorites.
Yeah, those are funny. So I also love Jaskier. So my line is the Jaskier line, and his is first episode. He's like, when will magic sexy women just stop jumping out at me?
That was pretty good.
That is a good one. I had forgotten about that one, but I like that one. Yeah, no, Jaskier has, like, I figured you would pick Jaskier lines. So
I love him so much.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
A little flaky, but he's adorable. So next one is most cringe scene. And I already know mine is not going to be one of yours. So
oh, really? Well, so, okay, I'll start this one off because I have a feeling, I think I know what you meant by this question, but I kind of went with like the scene that I think is deliberately sort of a little cringy, which I'm just going to say the line for you. You'll recognize it right away. Certainly Valerie will. Nah, you can't play a player. Yeah, that's what I always say. He's hiding something, and if I'm going to help Geralt, I need to find out what that is, because Geralt is a hammer. You're confused. When you're a hammer, every problem is a nail. You see a nail and you're like, grr, fuck this nail, fuck that nail in particular, and you hammer the nail. But sometimes the problem is something else. Sometimes the problem is a bowl of petunias or a bowl of porridge, and you can't hammer a bowl of porridge. I mean, you can try, but then your hammer gets all gunked up, porridge goes everywhere, and then you have no porridge. The solution requires a different kind of tool, and Radovid is that tool. Radovid is a spoon. like Jaskier is usually so witty, and yet every now and then he says the most awkward, uncomfortable, cringy things. And I love this scene because I was wondering, he's saying this all to Vespula as she's getting dressed after they've presumably spent the night together, and I'm like, what is she going to say to all this? And I love that she recognizes that he's kind of falling for Radovid. So that was it was deliberately, like, I remember when I first heard this and he was delivering that, I'm like, oh, you're just digging it deeper, Jaskier, come on. So to me, that's cringy, but it's meant to be cringy. It's not like, oh, this scene doesn't work, like, which I think maybe is what we were looking for on that one. I don't know.
You also, when he said, Radovid is a tool, I figured it was meant to be like a double language, like for the audience, we were supposed to think that Radovid is a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. I'm curious about Valerie's.
Mine's controversial because I took it literally. I went for something
I know.
cringe.
I figured you did. Yeah. And I have a feeling let's see what scene it is.
It's something you're thinking, but I picked a different scene. But yeah, the scene where Geralt's crying over his dead mom. I know. I know it's controversial. I just like the contacts, it just didn't work for me. It felt very flat. It felt kind of shoehorned in. Like, I get what they were trying to go for. They're trying to build up the dichotomy between Geralt as a parent versus like what he was raised with and how he would never leave his daughter. I understand like the point of the scene, but it just felt so like, oh, and here's this lady that happened to know your mom. How did she know you're not? We're not really gonna, she just knew her. And did you know her? Maybe yes, maybe no. How'd you find her? I don't know. It didn't make sense for me. It kind of didn't work. And, kudos to Henry Cavill for trying to work through those contacts, but it was just like, it felt really flat to me. Like the emotion just wasn't there.
That's funny. I think I might have chosen it as like my saddest scene.
Yeah. Hey, man, but that's a fun thing about media, right? Like everybody interprets it in different ways. So
yeah. And I know that what I chose, I know you guys liked. For me, the scene between 𝗙𝗪𝗏 and 𝗙𝗵𝗹𝗀 was like, get me
I
out.
was wondering. Yeah, the S&M scene. Yeah.
Other people, I think,
You're not alone.
felt that way about that scene, but I don't know. I love it. I love that they went there.
I know my husband and I were discussing it because we watched some of it together, and I know that you talked about how you felt it did suit 𝗙𝗪𝗏's character because harsh people need like a letdown or a release. We both felt the opposite. We were like, he's never gonna let someone do that to him. Like, it's like it didn't seem to fit him. But listen, that's what, we both see things in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about, like I said, everybody interprets it in their own way, and I think that's what makes it really interesting and juicy, is you can get all these fun, interesting interpretations off of it.
Yeah, no, I just find and this might come up in a little bit again, I just find the relationship between 𝗙𝗪𝗏 and 𝗙𝗵𝗏 so interesting and compelling, and it surprises me. And it I think throughout the course of watching season 3, and this is informed by having read the books and played the game and stuff, I kept expecting it to sort of zig and it would zag instead, and kept surprising me and catching me off guard, so that while it's not that different than what's actually established in the book, they've added enough of these sort of different surprising elements to it that it still managed to keep me guessing. And to me, it's one of the strongest. Well, I wouldn't say that. Like, there's a lot I think season 3 does well, but it's certainly been one of the ones I enjoy, the aspects I've enjoyed most.
I feel like I need to clarify, just so like your listeners don't come after me with pitchforks for being mean about the emotional mom scene. But like, the pieces didn't connect for me in that way.
I do agree that the part with his mom and the fact that they had to seek her out, that meaning the mom's friends, I do think that didn't seem authentic. Like,
it was a little weird.
But I I was touched when he started crying. There's nothing I love more than a man crying. I
just wish they would have CG. They CG'd the eyes. This is the hill I will die on, the CG. They CGI'd the eyes a lot more this season, which I thought was awesome. And I was so happy that they did that. I don't know why they didn't do it for that scene, because I just think it would have worked so much better to have him cry and not have those like weird, the lenses kind of blocking the soul. It just didn't work for me. Like, CG more eyes.
It's interesting because, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like yellow contacts is just a hard ass.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Like, I just finished watching One Piece, and that character who has yellow eyes in that show, I strong disagree with whoever said it works for him too, because it doesn't. Like, he looks just as bad as Henry Cavill does in the yellow eyes. Yeah. And then meanwhile, we were watching Wednesday, and we had what's her name, Bianca, with the light blue eyes, and like that worked. I think it's just yellow is hard, I don't know, it's hard to do.
So this actually might be a good time to take a break from these questions, because I know we want to talk about wigs.
I want to hear you talk about wigs, Mindy, so much. I'm so excited.
I feel like I should have worn it. It's right here in the closet.
Nice.
Okay, so a little bit of background. I'm Orthodox Jewish, and where I come from, women, once they get married, they cover their hair in general, and then generally when they go out with a wig. I happen to have a massive collection of hats, because personally I thought that covering your hair with a wig made no sense. So I generally wear a wig only like for family occasions, or like where it's, my mom would be disappointed if I wore a hat because it's not as fancy. So, and then there was a job that I worked at that I had to wear a wig every day. But in any case, I have a collection of some costume wigs, and then I have like a more expensive wig. But the point is I grew up in a culture where people, when they get married, they spend thousands of dollars on their wigs. And it's like a major thing. Like, they go shopping, they get it customized. Now there's lace front is like a big deal, where you have all these baby hairs you add. So here's my thing on wigs. And I also know people who make wigs. So from what I understand, right, normal people have like a certain volume of hair. Some of us have more hair, some of us have less. Wigs generally are composed of like 8 people's hair. Apparently, it's like a lot of, it's a lot more voluminous than a regular person's hair. And there's a problem when you can see it in the movie. So I'll give you an example of a wig that I never saw as a wig, Geralt's wig. Reason being, it's like growing out of his head because he has stuff like here, and then it's also not as voluminous. But Ciri's wig bothered me the entire time, because every wig that is very voluminous sits like on top of a person's head. Like, you see that it's like elevated by like 1 to 2 inches. That was one problem. The other problem was that she had no baby hairs over here. Like, it was maybe from here, but there was no like small hairs with a net that like a better wig would have. And I think Geralt does have that type of wig where like the hairs seem to grow from his temples. She only had like the hair connected with the lace front on top. And then there's a trick that a lot of Jewish women do is they like take out some of their hair and like put it here so that it looks like natural. But that's what what's it called? Ciri had it the entire time. She always had these two little strands. Yeah, it was just so wooden. It was straw-like. It was way too voluminous. It was like higher up, and it did not have any of the side hair. So it was very, very wig-like to me.
Yeah, Yennefer's too, I thought was just like it looked like a wig. It just looked like a Halloween, Party City wig that they put on Anya. And I'm like, oh, why? I thought Radovid's was good. Like Radovid's looked great.
I didn't even know Radovid had a wig.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his wig. But but I don't know. The girls, they just didn't work for me.
That's interesting though. Like, I mean, I put that in, like, you're not, like, that's not your business. You don't work in, you're not a wig creator or design, but you have like such a familiarity with them. You almost come to it as like sort of a professional outlook, because I feel like that's the sort of thing the average person might not pick up on. But you always hear like people in the industry, like my wife works in visual effects, and it's just like there's times she's like, yeah, that looks so bad, and I'm like, to me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, it looks fine. Like, I guess if you stop and pick it apart, maybe it looks fake, but like, I mean, she'll just right off the bat be like, nah, that's not good visual effects.
That's me with like the graphics, whenever, which are like this key art and stuff. I'm like, oh, that person looks photoshopped in there.
Yeah. I remember you said that when they released the key art originally. You're like, yeah, this just looks bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, I'm like, it looks fine. You're like, no,
it looks fine. It's just like, if you know what you're looking for, then you're like, ooh, I see what they did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't notice the eyes necessarily. I remember you mentioned, I was just listening to episode 6 this morning, and you mentioned about Yen's purple eyes. I happen to love purple eyes. So I'm like, even if it maybe didn't look realistic, I was like, oh, it looks so pretty. It's purple. So, that didn't bother me.
Yeah, for me, it's not the realism of that. It's the contacts. When they use the contacts look weird. It's just they're thick. You lose I keep saying the soul, but you lose the soul in the eyes when you have these like really thick contacts. And there's some contacts that work. I think Istrid's contacts are fine. Like, I don't think he looks odd, but there's just something about the thickness of the purple and the yellow ones. So and series too, a little bit. So when they're using the CGI, I don't care about the color. I just think it looks so much more natural and realistic.
Yeah, I would have to watch it again and like think, is this CGI? Is this context? I didn't think about it.
Yeah, I usually don't either, Mindy.
I realize this is a me thing.
Yeah.
I'm just fully aware that this is just like a random me thing, and most people do not care.
Yeah.
It's fun to see what everyone picks up on.
Yeah. Like, it's usually like Valerie has these stronger opinions that I'm like, okay, I can see. I definitely see her comments on the costumes this season, and definitely the wigs, but the contacts, by and large, I'm still like, I don't know. We just got off of watching the Hexer. This is not that bad. So,
that's what you compare it to.
Yeah. The Hexer, for any of your listeners who don't know, is the Polish, the early 2000s Polish language adaptation of The Witcher that came out before the Netflix series, and we did a whole season about that, which we had never seen it before, and now we've watched it, so you don't have to. So.
Yeah, I intended to watch it and I didn't, and whatever.
I mean, it has its charms. Like, if you're a Witcher fan, there are parts of it that are fun. But yeah, there's no official translation for it, so there are these fan subs that are just awful. They're just not. Yeah, and I wonder how much of
fun though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like, these awful translations, and we definitely had some, like, we lost our stuff, like, sometimes just like over some of those translations. First time I made Valerie cry from laughter.
Yeah,
it was an endorsement.
It was a good time.
Yeah. I don't know. I would like to think I only make Valerie cry from laughter, but it's happened a few times.
I mean, once you made me cry from not laughter, but
Well, yeah, we've both cried on the podcast from not laughter, which I think might come up in just a minute.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, before we go to our next question. Okay, so next question. Most emotional scene for you guys.
Do you want to go, Tim?
Well, like I alluded to it earlier, there's only one time I've cried on the podcast, certainly from like actual emotion rather than us just cracking up like so much. But but that was 𝗙𝗪𝗏's death scene in the final episode of season 3. You want to hear a grown man kind of break into tears,
and then you made me cry, you jerk.
I know.
I was doing fine, and then Tim started getting teary, and I was like, oh no.
If memory serves, you had one single tear, that you should
perfect tear just down the side.
No, it's just like I mean, anyone who listens to our podcast would have known this, like from early on. I've been such a big 𝗙cie fan, and this happens in the book. So Valerie and I kind of knew it was coming, and one thing we all
See, there she is.
All right, sorry.
Where did I freeze up?
You were talking about how you knew that it was coming, that 𝗙cie was going to die.
Okay. So ever since we realized that was coming, that we knew that this was going to be coming, and we knew it was going to be so much more difficult in the show than it was in the books, we were kind of dreading it. And basically from episode 6 onward, I was just uneasy, unsure, okay, is it going to happen here? Is it going to happen in the battle? They could change it, they could have it play a little differently. They've already changed a lot of 𝗙cie's story, and so I was dreading. And so, but the problem with the final episode is I started maybe hoping they weren't going to do that, and that she'd survive, and they keep her going, since they had made her such a bigger character. And so then once I realized oh no, this is happening, and they scripted that moment so well, and so sad, that to me that's by far the most emotional scene.
Same. Tim pretty much summed it up.
Yeah, so I have it 𝗙cie down, a different scene with 𝗙cie down for the saddest moment. So that's going to be a little later. But yeah, I chose for the most emotional was when Geralt was crying over his mom.
Oh,
so I like that.
It is striking to see Geralt cry.
Right.
He cries in the 𝗪𝗏 as well, and I remember I was a little surprised by that too.
And did you notice when he's on the ground after 𝗪𝗶𝘁 defeats him, it seems like he also has tears in his eyes. So that I got the sense, because he felt like he couldn't be there for 𝗎₃, he wasn't able to protect her.
He let down his kid.
That was nice. All right, worst betrayal.
Worst. I mean, is there any other one than the...
I knew you guys were going to say that, so I was like, okay, I have the liberty to choose something else. So,
well, I don't know. Valerie sometimes surprises me. Valerie, what is your worst betrayal?
I said 𝗪𝗶𝘁𝗃 being horrible to 𝗙cie.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. To me, it's just the one that really, really stands out. I don't know that there could be another one that's quite that bad. That said, the only reason I ask is I do know sometimes I think Valerie knows, oh, Tim's probably going to do this, so I want to be different, so but if we're both the same one, then I mean, it really it just, that was, I guess, I don't know, you could feel either way about it, but I feel like in creating a relationship between 𝗙cie and 𝗪𝗏𝘁 in the show that does not exist in the books, it just made his betrayal feel more personal, because he just he kind of just largely shows up when Geralt and Yen come to Aretuza, and there are a bunch of scenes. Well, there's a big long scene between Geralt and 𝗪𝗏𝘁, and he's definitely a presence, but you don't really know him the way you do on the show. His betrayal does seem a little more just, it feels like a betrayal, rather than just some guy deciding, who you barely know, deciding to throw in with Nilfgaard. So I thought they handled it really well. It certainly doesn't hurt that oh god, how do we find her name was Miana Buring, or
I think
is that how
We thought it was 𝗪𝗂𝗃, but then people
𝗪𝗂𝗃?
started saying, there was like an interview recently with Lauren where she said 𝗪𝗂𝗃. So
𝗪𝗂𝗃.
now I'm like, God damn. Oh, sorry. Swearing on your podcast. We swear on our podcast, guys.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it. We were like, have we been saying her name wrong for 3 seasons?
I know. It always gets us, like, the pronunciations. She's not the only actor we found out we were mispronouncing. But like, her performance is so great that you feel that betrayal when she realizes it. Matter of fact, I think I might have had that down as like one of your later answers. So so that's that. I guess that would be both of ours.
It is. I was rewatching it yesterday and I was, oh my God, it was like so upset. But by the way, I know you love 𝗙cie𝗵𝗹𝗯𝗃. I forgot to mention before, my husband also loves 𝗙cie𝗵𝗃 because he loves strong, dominant women. So I got him she was on Cameo at some point, so I got him.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh,
that's adorable.
That's really cool. Yeah, she was on Cameo, I think, at one point.
So my worst betrayal was when 𝗪𝗃 killed Gallatin.
Oh yeah.
And
that was the other big one.
Which bothered me for 2 reasons. One, because 𝗪𝗃 is just a mindless person until all the way to the very end. Like, he's just doing it because Ymir told him. And the second thing is that I don't think there was any utility for Ymir in it. I think he only did it as a test of 𝗪𝗃's loyalty.
Yeah, he just did it to be a jerk.
Which is crazy. Like, this is grew up together. They saved each other's lives multiple times, and this is what you do just as a proof of loyalty for your jerk leader. I'm so upset. Honestly, I loved 𝗪𝗃, but this season I was like very not happy with 𝗪𝗃. I was like, I lost.
What you doing, buddy? What's going on there?
No, I agree. Like, you kind of saw it coming, you kind of did, but I
didn't. So,
you didn't? I mean, well, none of that's in the book. That's all original for the show. So it's not like I 100% knew it was coming, but I don't know. I suspected.
When I was watching it again, when I saw Ymir like kind of pull 𝗪𝗃 aside, then I realized it was foreshadowed there.
You're like, oh no.
That is another really bad betrayal. Absolutely.
All right, most disappointing decision.
The costumes. Oh man. Some of the costumes are fine. Like, and we have a costume question later, I believe. I think, right? Yeah, favorite costume, which we'll get to. But I don't know what was up with Yen's wardrobe this entire season. Like, I didn't love her wardrobe in season 2, but I could hand wave it because she was on the run and she didn't have magic, so it made sense that she wouldn't have like the same pizzazz. But I just thought her stuff was so ugly and cheap looking in season 3, and she's such a beautiful woman, and it made me so sad. So now some of the other costumes were great, but
I know, like, the costumes that she started out with, like the peasant-like costumes. I happen to like them aesthetically because I like that look, but it doesn't strike me as.
Well, see, that's the thing. They look like something you'd get at H&M. Like, they look like modern, a chic take on like a peasant outfit, but it doesn't look like fantasy world. It looks like, I need to go to the Ren Fair this weekend. What do I have in my closet that I can throw together to, like, have an outfit? So
too clean, too new. Also, I noticed that. Like, I was watching, I was like,
elastic neckline.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to me, Valerie, that you because I read this question as like most disappointing character decision. And
I mean, I definitely put my own flavor on it.
Well, that's the thing, is it's like, I'm like, oh, here, I thought I was being clever. I'll let you know my answer. So most disappointing decision. 𝗙cie𝗵𝗃 choosing to take her life. No, that's brutal, hard, and disappointing, but I blame 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗃 for breaking her heart. Ciri surrendering to the darkness. No, she's desperate, and we all make poor decisions growing up. 𝗪𝗃 choosing Ymir over the life of his friend, Mindy. I mean, it's definitely disappointing, in part because, at least selfishly, it meant no more of Valerie's 𝗪𝗶𝗶𝗹 impression on our podcast.
That was funny.
Thank you. Very one note, but I do what I can.
But to me, it's not the most disappointing decision. Rather, that would be the decision not to put Valdo Marx's second song, "A Jinx Upon That Minx," on the soundtrack. So come on, Netflix, this needs to happen.
That's weird. I agree. It's a funny song too.
I know. And they put so many songs on the soundtrack
it's like 50
this season.
songs long.
It's a stacked soundtrack, including like a bunch of songs that, you know, kind of Jaskier hardly sings on the, you know, and they did a whole fleshed out version, but that song, nope, not released.
I love it. So you see what I work with when you do a podcast with a writer, he like comes guns loaded with all this stuff. He's just got a beautiful written out thing. And I'm like, I thought the costumes were bad. Anyway.
No, you're put out, don't worry. It's interesting. So Tim, your first thing that you mentioned is what I chose as the worst decision. Disappointing.
Yeah.
I don't know if the worst decision. So it feels terrible to blame someone when they're obviously like in so much pain.
Mhm.
But I was very disappointed that 𝗪cia killed herself because she is so indispensable and she was the leader and she was the maternal figure and she was so powerful and they needed her and she could have done so much good. And I was very sad that she didn't feel like she could contribute. And it's not true. No, 𝗪cia, like you're so needed.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's all of it. It's why it's so hard and why, like, when, you know, like I should mention when I watched the scene, I was definitely sad. You know, like I don't know. I think I might have cried a little bit, but like I was not expecting to do it when we were discussing it, but it was because we were like really had to dive into kind of, you know, where she was and what she said and how Yen reacted to it. And, you know, suddenly Valerie and I found ourselves super emotional on mic. Which is that's not our MO. I mean, there might be some people who do that sort of stuff a lot, but that's not me and that's not Valerie. So that was, you know, that was very surprising.
I haven't gotten to that episode yet, but I will. I'll listen to
it. We both cry. It's a good time.
The rest of it's not heavy. It's not a heavy episode.
It's just a heavy topic, you know.
We, you know,
it's a topic that affects a lot of people, and
So the next one is, I guess, another heavy question, and the other ones are more funny. So most tense moment, which is interesting because, well, just go ahead and I'll tell you my tense moment. How about that?
I mean, for me, it's like all of episode 5, like the siege on 𝗪𝗏𝗪, the fight between Geralt.
Episode 6, you mean?
Excuse me. And we were at a party last night, guys. My brain's not good. The siege on 𝗪𝗏𝗪, the fight between 𝗪𝗏𝘁 and Geralt, like the whole thing was just like a powder keg, and it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's pretty much. It's funny because I thought there's a number of good choices, but that was pretty much my answer as well. You know, the Thanedd coup and Geralt's battle with 𝗪𝗏𝘁, you know, it's both because I knew what was coming and was dreading it. Like I knew Geralt was going to lose that fight and get seriously hurt by 𝗪𝗏𝘁. But I also knew that they could change things and defy our expectations in the cruelest ways. Like I mentioned, I was wondering, you know, could 𝗪cia's death happen during the battle? You know, could she die in battle or like after casting that giant spell rather than you know, the way she does in the books? Like any number of things could happen and did, including a number of like shocking deaths that aren't in the book. That like, I think that whole episode was just, you know, edge of your seat for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, mine is also from within the episode. I agree. The whole episode is just a massively, you know, emotional and like, wow, dramatic episode. For me, like the most tense moment was when 𝗪𝗏𝘁 betrays 𝗪cia and then opens the door for the elves to come in. Oh, God.
I
was like, whoa.
And she's just standing there alone. Like facing them down.
That definitely was a gut punch for me when I saw that too. I'm like, oh no, because you know, you see his betrayal sink in on her, and when she realizes it, oh gosh, and then immediately they, you know, suddenly she's confronted by all these elves, although I do admire that like she immediately gets her resolve. So you know,
she's awesome.
I
love her. All right, most confusing scene.
Should I go?
Sure.
So we talked about this on the podcast. For me, and this doesn't necessarily paint me well, but I did not pick up, it was not clear to me that Geralt thought Ciri was maybe dead when the tower exploded, because he's in Brokilon and he's all like just being emo and he's not doing what he needs to do to try and get better, and he's very depressed. And I don't know, I was watching that, like, I don't understand why you're in this headspace. Like, why aren't you fighting to get your kid back? And Tim pointed out to me, he was like, oh, well, he, thinks she died. And I don't know. I just didn't get that from the scene. I didn't pick up on that. And after Tim pointed out, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. But just in how, I don't know, how it was shot or how it was played, that just wasn't something that I interpreted from the scene. So all of the subsequent actions that Carol was doing made no sense to me.
And for me, my answer, and it's confusing in the moment when you're watching these episodes for the first time, but I think it's, it comes together by the end of the season, is just the debut of Taryn, this alternate 𝗙cie, and that after that weird creepy scene with, the I call it the Cronenberg monster.
Call it the human 𝗪𝗏𝗏
it's after that, like, and then suddenly there's this other young woman who is saying that she's 𝗙cie and knows Geralt. I mean, like, at the end of that episode, I was just like, what is that? What's going on?
I guess this is not in the books.
No, well, sort of.
The fake 𝗙cie is but you don't get this detail into her sort of creation, if that's the right word, like, it's and that certainly that discovery of that creature in the monster fight, that doesn't happen. So this is stuff that they kind of fleshed out, and so at the time,
fleshed out, sorry.
Literally at the time, I didn't quite put the two pieces together. In fairness, we talked about this but we were watching these episodes really late at night, or at least I was, and I didn't quite make that connection that, oh, this is eventually going to be fake 𝗙cie. But like, now that we got into the end of the season and we realized that, it's like, okay, all right, I see it. And so I said, I'm not confused by it anymore, but at the moment, it definitely was the most confusing moment for me.
Right. Okay. So what was most confusing for me was when the ballroom scene started repeating itself. I literally exited Netflix to make sure. I was like, did it restart by mistake the episode? Did I start watching 5 instead of 4 again? And then I realized that they were actually repeating it.
That's fair, because it's not like they have a tendency of doing stuff like that. I mean, they've messed with timelines before. We talked about that, like how, especially in season 1, there's all sorts of crazy timeline shenanigans, but not like this. So it did take me a moment too. But I don't know. I personally love episode 5, so that once I realized what they were doing, I went with it.
Okay. All right, best hairstyle. This will be fun to hear.
Well, I'm going to go first because I don't have much to say about this. Is so much more Valerie's bag than mine, but pretty much every one of Philippa's hairstyles would be my answer. And if Valerie agrees, she can say why, because I'm sure she can.
Yeah, I loved everything Philippa had. Did you watch Blood Origin? Did you see Witcher Blood Origin? So they had the hair hat in Blood Origin, and this time they had the predecessor to the hair hat, the hair veil, which was awesome. But just everything they did, I love Philippa's hair so much thought and care went into it. You don't get to see cool black hairstyles, especially in a fantasy show. And the fact that she had hairstyles that were representative of what was going on in the scene. So when she was doing the whipping scene, her hair was in a high, tight braid that was like a whip. And at the end, when she's crowning 𝗏𝗏𝗏, she has the bantu knots that are resembling a crown. And it was just so cool to see such varied and interesting hairstyles that also had a nice little nod to what was going on in the story.
That's very cool.
I just loved everything she had.
I didn't even pay attention to that. I noticed she had the best. I agree, she had the best hairstyles. Every time something different. I didn't notice the connection to the scene. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk to the hairdresser and just see how much of that was intentional. But I felt like that, there was a very intentional eye when they were putting it together, and they just look great. All of her hairstyles were all awesome.
So I was also thinking about do I have a particular hairstyle? And then I was watching the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 ball, and another word for the ball. There was this random woman walking by. She had a braid, and on top of a massive hair. I don't know how to describe it. She was literally an extra, and I like that the best.
Wow.
That's really cool. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that and look for this.
I think she was wearing brown. Woman. It was it kind of looked like, let's say, a wedge, very medieval looking.
Yeah.
It was a crown of hair and then a braid on top of that.
Interesting.
I liked it.
I've not.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't it's not ringing a bell for me, so I'm gonna have to rewatch it. That's kind of cool though. I did not expect random extra to
also
be
runner up pirate Istrid looked hot. Yeah, I don't know, he got a glow up this season. He was always an attractive guy, but this season, like, the sexy pirate hair was really doing it for everyone apparently. So
yeah. All right, most beautiful setting. Like setting.
You want to go, Valerie?
It's interesting because, like, a lot of I felt like they didn't have the big sweeping landscapes. Like the desert, I thought was really beautiful, especially when they have the big shots and it's just her and it's just her footprints and there's nobody else for miles. Like, I thought that was a really cool scene. And then Yarpen's Airbnb, as we call it, the house where they're like being a family for a while, and it's just this beautiful, like, is that the one with the lake? It's the one with the snow. Yeah, the snow with the ice skating and everything. Like, that was just a really pretty. I'm like, I would stay there. That looks like a great house.
So is that your favorite?
I think so. Like the desert, I think, was just a really cool.
Well, the desert is mine, which I thought was a weird thing to say, but I started with it, so I guess
it was pretty.
I mean, like, but yeah, like it's I'm not usually a desert person, and that one certainly is as inhospitable as they get. Like, you know, it's nothing but danger and peril to 𝗙cie, but it was also really beautiful at night, like beneath all the stars, with 𝗙cie singing a little sacrifice as she like tried to navigate herself by them. You know, I thought like that was like really just kind of both tender and heartfelt and sad, and you know, I don't know, I guess I'm just a sucker for like a big, you know, clear starscape, you know, and so while during the day, you know, I don't think I'd appreciate the beauty of the desert at night, like, you know, especially like sort of the things Valerie mentioned, you know, her footsteps and, you know, surrounded by these dunes. It is sort of this like this weird sort of beauty there. So I would say that was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, I totally see. So what I chose was actually very humble. I loved Annika's roof.
I totally agree.
That was very beautiful.
Yeah.
So usually, you know, I kind of like the flowers on a meadow, like on the floor, but like it was very pretty. So
I agree. I noticed that too when we were watching, and I'm like, oh, this is some cool set design. I might have mentioned that on one of our episodes, but yeah, I really like that.
I don't remember
I've seen it used in decor, like setting. You know, obviously we see wallflowers, and then I've seen like people do it as in the ceiling, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that one because I don't remember that set either. So Mindy, you're giving me a lot of stuff to rewatch.
All right, most beautiful favorite costume.
Okay, now I'll say nice things about the costumes.
I'm gonna let Valerie go second.
Find one.
In part because she has a lot more to say about this than I do, but also in part because she a little bit stole my thunder on this one. Just a little bit, because I loved pretty much, like I said earlier, I love pretty much every costume. Well, I said this on our podcast. I love pretty much every costume worn by 𝗪cie𝗿𝗃 this season in a role as Philippa. But my favorite costume is probably Istrid's formal outfit at the Thanon ball. I mean, who knew sexy pirate was going to work so well for him? But it does. Istrid at the ball. I wish I could pull off that look.
I actually, by the way, have a friend who does wear stuff like that on a regular basis.
Oh, nice.
I could see why.
Stairs, but yeah.
If you could pull it off, I could see why. So anyhow, that's mine.
I really liked a lot of the, you know, as much as I make fun of Yennefer's costumes, I really liked a lot of the background characters' costumes, or the secondary characters' costumes. I think Radovid's costume is great for a few different reasons. I saw an interview with the costume designer where she was talking about like how she was doing specific color palettes for specific places, and Redania was red, which was a thing I noticed when I was watching it. So there's a lot of red in Redania, and Radovid's got this beautiful like brocade tailored doublet, but then he's got the huge fur on top of it, which is this show of like opulence and wealth and luxury. But it also does the task, because I believe, you know, I haven't seen 𝗪cie𝗿𝗃 in person, but I think he's a bit slighter than Joey Beatty. But because of how the costume is built and he's got this big fur around him, it makes him look bigger and makes him look comparable in size, which is a cool costuming trick. So I really liked his whole vibe, like the rock star swagger that he had going on. It was cool.
Yeah, that's interesting, because maybe because I'm like too American, but when I see that fur, to me, it just looks a little ridiculous because it's like overdone.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe because like, we're not used to that, and this just looks like too much to us. So, but that to me also seemed very much in tune with Radovid, because he's forced into this role. He's not really into it. He kind of looks ridiculous a lot of the times because he plays like a fool. So it fit in very well with who he was.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, you guys talk about 𝗪𝗧 𝗶𝗃𝗃. Yeah, Philippa's costume at the ball was my favorite costume. You know, with the
see you and Tim.
Yeah, I love that one. Valerie did not like it, but to me, I'm like, no, that feels exactly like what Philippa would wear as something like that. Like, I feel like she got the memo, and all these other kind of just boring black, you know, dresses that people, you know, the sorceresses were wearing, they just didn't stand out enough to me. And, you know, and the one thing we know about that scene in the book is, you know, they're all supposed to be out competing for attention with each other. So
and I think she has pants too, which is kind of a cool,
yeah, it's very Cher-like to me. It reminded me of Cher, like in the 80s,
Bob
70s,
Mackie,
and 80s.
Cher,
yeah. So that was kind of what I thought.
She always looks in control.
Yeah. No, I love her. That's what I said. I love her as a character. I love her and 𝗙𝗪𝗏 together, because that's part of it. Is I'm like, does she need him? You know, like, I don't know that she does. So the fact that she, you know, stays like there, you know, stays with him and works with him, like, you know, part of me is like, well, she must need him for reasons other than, you know, power political, you know, like they probably have this sort of support for each other. So I don't know, a little bit of a tangent, but I love I love them both. So I'm you know, I'm not, as far as I'm concerned, there's no wrong answer with them.
It's nice to see like a strong relationship that isn't romantic or sexual. That's interesting to see.
That too.
It's not friendship either. Like it's like a mix between pragmatism and some loyalty, you know.
Yeah, but I don't know, I think the fact that she you know, believes in him and kind of at the end stays, you know, sort of basically stays with him. She could have abandoned him, and frankly, I expected her to. And so the fact that she doesn't and puts this faith in him shows that, you know, I don't know, there might be something, like, I'm not saying like, I'm definitely not romantic, but that you know, it might be more than just pragmatism, because that's what I thought it was. That's what I was expecting, is like, this is just a pragmatic, you know, relationship of convenience. And yeah, I don't know that it is. So
all right, most tender moment.
Let's go first.
I mean, I can go on ahead. I mean, there are definitely a few standouts, but I'm going to go with the one that's, well, one that I think is probably a bit different, at least for the sort of stuff I would say. I would say the two real moments that 𝗪𝗪 and 𝗫𝗏 share together this season, the scene where they come up with dialogue for Geralt and Yen's reunion, and the moment they share when he's watching her during the ball, you know, when he's they play cards and he sings a little bit of a little sacrifice. You know, we haven't really seen these two characters together all that often. And so it's nice to me to see that there's genuine love, care, and affection between them. 𝗫𝗏 definitely needs it. And I don't know, the chemistry between them is so great. You know, I wish we got more of it. So yeah.
That's a great, it's a great moment. I like the family stuff, where especially in episode 1, where the main trio are starting to become a family and really starting to like learn and grow and discover their relationships and their bonds. You know, when 𝗫𝗏 and Yennefer are ice skating, Geralt's watching them fondly, and then they kind of fall down laughing, which was an accident. I don't know if you know that. They both actually, the actresses wiped out and they kept it in the show. So but yeah, it was just a really sweet, like getting those family vibes. It was really adorable.
Yeah, it is. The moment that felt most tender to me was when Yennefer decided she had to go back to help 𝗪𝗪. That was very sweet.
Yeah, that's what I said. There's a number of them. I'm not surprised we all have different ones. So
all right, let's try to fit as many as we can in the next few minutes. Kindest character.
See, this one I don't really have an answer. I don't know. Like, I would say it's sometimes 𝗪𝗪𝗪, but then 𝗪𝗪𝗪 is also very self-serving. You know, it's like Tim, do you have a?
Absolutely.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, like 𝗬𝗎 right up until the final episode. I mean,
Yeah.
she so desperately wants to help people, and is willing to do anything to prevent others from coming to harm. Like, you know, the minute you know, she's told that, you know, oh, we can't go this place because, you know, we have to go here, we, you know, to save these, like, she'll
Yeah.
always say yes to it. You know, she's just, you know, she doesn't want people hurt. She doesn't like, you know, like, she wants a better world. She's so idealistic that, you know, it's then kind of a bit gut-wrenching to see where she ends up, and know, especially if you know what's kind of ahead. Now it feels real, it feels human, you know, like, it feels like this is kind of what life is like. We start off more idealistic than often we end up. But right now she's absolutely, I think, the kindest character.
You know what? I'm going to take a page from that book, but I'm going to say also 𝗪𝗏, because 𝗪𝗏 is the only one that seemed to give a crap about the girls that just randomly were missing in her.
That's a good answer too.
She's the only one that's like, hey, where are our students? Like,
yeah, I was very disappointed with the sorceresses in general. I mean, from season 1 with Aretusa and how, you know, Yennefer was treated when she went there, I was appalled. And then now how the, you know, now that they're teachers, they did not seem to be treating them any better. So I agree.
Yeah, that really bugged me, actually. That was another confusing moment in the show where 𝗪𝗏 is like, hey, the students are missing. And 𝗪𝗏 is like, oh, whatever. I'm like, what are you doing, 𝗪𝗏? I know you're not the headmistress anymore, but we should care if, like, young girls go missing.
Yep.
Especially knowing what happened to them in the story.
Yeah, same. My kids are in school, and like the lengths that, you know, the administration to make sure that kids are accounted for is like
it's like the number one rule: don't lose the kid.
So I definitely also thought of 𝗬𝗎 as a contender, but I ultimately went with Geralt because he's an adult and 𝗬𝗎 is young, so, you know, it's kind of a little bit more expected. But Geralt is someone who hasn't lost his moral code, and he often, you know, perseveres with his moral code at great detriment to himself. And my, you know, the 2 cases in this season was, he said this line that I really liked. He said, I will not pay for someone I love by having contempt for myself, in terms of having someone else replace 𝗬𝗎 and like die instead of her. And then when he saved, you know, there was when they were passing through all the way at the end, they were going through a checkpoint, and like this other family was being harassed and this girl was being kidnapped. He was like, okay, you know, too bad. I'm just going out, I'm going to rescue them. And I admire that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're all good answers. Like, I don't disagree with any of them. Those are, but it's just like kindness looks different in this world, I think, you know, than what we would tend to associate it with.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very cruel world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. So. All right, biggest surprise.
Filavandrel's death.
Filavandrel
getting exploded. I was like, oh, because that is not a thing that happens in the book. So every time something is different, I'm like, woohoo! I didn't know that was going to happen. Yay!
You know, I'm curious that's funny that you picked his, but yeah, his is definitely a big shock. I mean, I'm not going to rehash what I said because we kind of went on a tangent earlier, but for me it was the 𝗥𝗏𝗏 and Philippa relationship for all the reasons I said like 3 minutes ago. So
let's rewind.
I
don't know if it's so much a surprise. I chose it for surprise. Whether it fits, I don't know. But when 𝗪𝗏𝗏 helps the maiden, which is out, and it probably is my favorite moment in the entire season. I love it because he's such a jerk, and he's so annoying, and he's so racist, and he just uses that same quality to save the day, and it's hilarious and funny. He does fire magic, which he's been railing against, and he's like putting himself up, and he's so funny and so perfect and so suited, and he's still a racist mother, whatever, but also at that moment in time, I'm so, you know, I'm like, I'm rooting for the sorceresses over the elves at that point. I'm like, oh my god, like save them, someone. So fantastic.
That was a delightful moment.
He saves pretty much all of them. Like, if not for that, I don't think they would have gotten out. So
I think I tweeted on our account, I was like, 𝗪𝗏𝗏 went out doing what he loved, being a racist jerk.
It's so funny.
It's a great moment.
It's such a twist. It's like, it's unexpectedly delightful. Never thought we would say that about 𝗪𝗏𝗏.
I know. Yeah, I know, and I'm kind of glad they didn't really redeem him. You know, he's still So
Yep.
yeah.
All right. Saddest moment, which I feel like we a little repetitive, but yeah, saddest moment.
𝗪𝗶𝗁𝗧𝗵𝗲 face getting ruined.
Oh,
Can't really be your
it was
answer.
that.
I feel like that's not the intention of the question, but yeah.
Is that really your answer, Valerie?
I mean, that's what I wrote down. But like, I would say like the family getting separated, 𝗫𝗵𝗏 feeling abandoned. You know, 𝗫𝗏's like Tim talked about so eloquently how 𝗫𝗏 at the end of it is kind of given up, and she's laughing. I'm trying to turn this around. He's laughing
I
at me.
like your answer. I like that.
It was sad. I agree. I
It was a beautiful face. No, it's only half a beautiful face.
No.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail
No,
you. It's
I'm
just-
done. You go. No,
No, I'm
I want
sorry.
to hear what you have to say, buddy.
I don't know if I could get it out after that. So my answer was in the final episode when Yen reveals the helplessness and anger she feels over 𝗙𝗪𝗏's suicide, and Geralt shares how distraught he is over being unable to protect Ciri. Like, to me, it's like the culmination of where their relationship has come to this season. Like, they're both grieving and they're both hurting, and for the first real time they seem like they're both willing to open up like completely to each other, rather than closing themselves off, which they've done in the past. And I'm not always the biggest Geralt and Yen fan out there. I talk about that a lot on the podcast, even though I love both the characters and I love both the actors playing them. I'm not always big, but this moment I just felt really true and genuine, and they were both showing a lot of vulnerability. And while we talked about this in our episode on it, that scene didn't make a lot of sense, I think narratively it gave them both like a good final scene on screen together to kind of go out on. So to me that was the saddest one to me, just because of how much they were both hurting and how much they had felt like they had failed people that were important to them.
Yeah, that's sad. Well, mine was mentioned, 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗲 exploding, because I liked him. I hate Francesca, but I love 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗲. So it was very sad when he died, and I know that Francesca blew her apart also. So
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry to the listeners. We're gonna do a speed round.
Lightning round. Yeah.
Most morally appalling view. It's a complex question, but we'll have to do it fast.
Well,
𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗲's experimenting on young girls.
Yeah, and I was going to say 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗲, which you pretty much we kind of said all the reasons why he goes out well, but yeah, still appalling moral worldview. So figured those would be the two answers. Mindy, do you have another
racist, Francesca, because she's just, again, racist against all humans, and she doesn't see the irony that like what she hates about them, she's doing herself, and she also does it to the detriment of her own people. She's an ideologue and a zealot, and she's a purist in the sense that she doesn't recognize that she's damaging her people with her ideology. So that's great. All right, character you're rooting for the most.
I think 𝗫𝗏. I want 𝗫𝗏 to like do okay. You can do it, girl. I believe in you.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I think like you're kind of meant to root for her.
Yeah.
So
same. Yeah, especially the episodes when she's eating all those bugs. Poor thing.
Yeah.
All right, fourth wall break. And actually, did I put this in? I don't remember.
I don't think so. So it'll be a fun surprise.
Because I was watching something and there was a fourth wall break, and it was so funny that I was like, okay, I have to put it in. Okay, so I'm wondering if you guys, so spontaneously, did anything strike you as a fourth wall break?
I mean, yeah, like I'm gonna say, because I want to bring him up, and I will censor myself, but mother effing Valdo Marx and his like coming between the camera and Jaskier.
That was pretty great. Yeah.
Like I don't know if that's technically a fourth wall break, but it felt like one to me, and I love that moment. I know Valerie does too. So
yeah, that's a good one. I think that's my answer as well. Yeah.
That was funny. So I put this in because I was watching episode 1, and I don't remember when it was, but someone said things are changing fast and furiously. I thought that was funny.
The wind howling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jaskier is writing whatever, Ride of the Witcher, although Ride Witcher Ride as we all call it. And yeah, he's like, wind howling? No, I feel like that's been done. So
Yeah,
that's a common in the game. Winds howling is like
Yeah.
Witcher 3 all the time. So
you're right. That was one. So there are a few fourth wall breaks. Yeah. Huh. Okay.
All right, creepiest scene.
Flesh monster.
Yeah. 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 I mean, come on.
Yeah. Nothing else.
None of them can compare. Even 𝗪𝗶𝗁𝗃𝗍𝗪's face is not that creepy.
Tim saw it before I did, and he texted me just to be like, I had weird dreams after that episode. And I was like, oh, I wonder why. And then I saw the episode and I was like, that's it.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Most touching relationship.
The familial bonds, both the family of the main three, and also 𝗪cie being part of that family as well. Like that really did it for me. I'm a big sucker for found families in general.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I distilled it, just to a single relationship, but it fits under what Valerie said, and it's always going to be Geralt and Ciri. I mean, to me, that's what I love about The Witcher first and foremost, is kind of this surrogate, father-daughter relationship at its heart. And the fact that that's really starting to take shape this season, even compared to last season where I didn't really feel like it did, it's starting to really do it this season. So yeah, that's always going to be my favorite.
Yeah, I went for a little bit more unconventional one. I liked Radovid and 𝗪cie because I liked it because it was very imperfect. And I think that it's a testament to maturity that you can forgive someone for making a mistake or doing things that are really maybe shitty, but you understand it given the circumstances. And I think that, the fact that they forgave each other, and 𝗪cie especially forgave him with, showing him like an escape route, if I remember correctly, that showed that they're not idealistic enough to expect perfection. And they were able to understand that everyone's human and does things that aren't perfect.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Food you wanted to eat.
I actually messaged you earlier about this because I was like, does this all have to be season 3? Because I'm going to be real. There's not a lot of yummy food in season 3. There's like some radishes or whatever they're eating at the table in the first episode. And
Geralt seems to love those radishes.
Good for him, man, not me. And there's like the canapes, and there's like the meat in Redania. And other than that, I'm not really thinking. So I'm gonna cheat, and I'm just going honey cake. Sorry, Nightmare of the Wolf honey cake is still the supreme Witcher food, in my opinion.
I mean, I got an answer that fits in season 3. Yeah. I mean, it's all the food at the ball because it's magic and calorie free. So I could eat as much as I'd like. And of course, I drink the wine knowing that it's an aphrodisiac, because as we've discussed on our podcast, mages, they know how to get a little crazy in the sack, so I'm not going to be opposed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was watching it again, I was like, I was thinking about this question. I was like, there must have been food at the ball, but I could not even remember.
That was what I was thinking too. Because
in
the books, there's like delightful moments where he and Philip, like Geralt and Philip, are like pounding shrimp at the buffet table. And it's like one of the most charming, it's one of my favorite moments in that book. It's so silly. But they didn't really have that. Like he grabbed the canapé and shoved it in his mouth, but that was pretty much it. So yeah, I was taking it a little more literally than Tim, where you don't really see.
Ciri's donuts?
Ciri with her donuts.
When we know you like donuts.
I do like donuts. Those donuts looked okay.
Yeah, I know. That's fair. You're kind of like better one. I just love that scene with her, like with the both, the donuts in both hands. And like, the guy said something snarky to her, and I'm like, dude, like, no, I felt called out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree there wasn't much food this season, but in episode 1, when they're sitting at the table, so there was 2 dishes at the table. There was that salad, which I was like, to me looked so appetizing. I love salad, but it was like big leaves and no dressing, which was like the worst salad to me. But there was something that, in retrospect, it's probably like smashed like sweet potatoes, but I thought it was mac and cheese first, so I was like, okay,
right. The old mac and cheese.
I know it's not mac and cheese, but
I think
all right.
that's
And last
fair.
question: favorite monster of the season? Wouldn't be a Witcher podcast without a monster.
I mean, I love that flesh monster. It's so creepy. It's awful, and it's original to the show. So, like, one of the writers came up with that, which is, that's great. Like, it's just it's very cringe in the best way possible.
Well, I'm like, I think that's actually would probably be my answer, but I'm going to say something different. I didn't actually have this one down, so off the cuff, I'm going to say 𝗪𝗶𝘁𝗵𝗹𝗄. As Valerie would always say in season 1, the real monster is man all along, and the fact that he looks like a monster at the end of the season, I think that's just meant to be obvious sort of symbolism. So yeah, 𝗪𝗶𝘁𝗵𝗹𝗄. I mean, he's kind of our big bad.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna go with Valerie's answer, also Flesh Monster, because it's perfectly creepy and poignant and heartfelt and horrible. And
like going literally, I don't think they've ever had a scarier monster or creepier monster than that one. I don't know, like I love the 𝗪𝗫 too. I love like, that Ciri takes that one down. There's some good ones this season.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to rush, but it was so nice to have you on and to meet you in person. And everyone, listen to their podcast. Their podcast is fantastic. It is so funny. I love it. It's like just so fun to listen to. And so if you want scene by scene, episode by episode, that's the place to go.
Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely. One of the great things about doing the podcast is getting to meet people like you as well that we never would have even known about before doing Witcher stuff. So it's so exciting to get to just chat with awesome people and have fun conversations.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us on, Mindy. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was really, really fun. And it's so fun to hear your answers. It's really cool to, see everyone's brain approach the same material differently.
Yeah. Although I still think Valerie's 𝗪𝗶𝘁𝗵𝗹𝗄's face answer is my favorite of the session.
Beautiful face.
Yeah, it is. It is. He's a very good man. All right, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to spend this time with you. Really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you to my current patrons: Lily, Molly, Veronica, Emily, Joe Rochelle, 𝗪𝗪 Tuggles, Anne Rose, Alexa, Misty, Joanne, Esther, 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗏𝗄𝗏, Emily, Jean, Kay, Lily, Beckett, Christine, Sadie, Teresa, Mrs. Castaldo, 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗃𝗃, Ruby, Sophia, and Cringe. Your support is truly appreciated.